So I just read real quick. You have two GSDs or German Shepherds.
Uh-huh.
And
German Shepherd Pit Bull mix, yeah.
oh, okay. Both of them?
Yes.
Okay, they're both GSD and PD mixes. Okay, and they're from the same litter?
Yes.
Or okay. And they're getting into little arguments with each other, is it?
Yes and no. Yes, but it's not like it's only if like with one of them he's a resource guarder with his food.
Okay.
So if there's that situation, or sometimes they get into tiffs, but for the most part they get along. Most of the time they're super close, but they do get in their moods and yeah. So
which one's the one that resource guards?
Pyke.
Pyke. And he's always done this?
Yes, since we got him.
Okay. Has it ever gotten like escalated to a pretty like bad fight, or is it usually just like a quick argument and they let it go?
No, I mean, they still kind of, it's not as bad as the beginning. At the beginning, it was a little bad, but it's still, yeah, like there has been and there will be bloodshed at one point. Like his name is Pyke. He's like nicked like almost every dog he's friends with at some point or another.
Okay.
And there's always food or a toy involved, but it's 9 out of 10 times food. And the weird part is like he's a very sweet dog, but he just has these episodes, and he's going to be mostly the one that we want to work with both of them. But I feel like depending on however you do your curriculum or program, that we'll probably be working more with him, and then kind of lean off of Gianni, just because Pyke needs most of the work than out of the two of them.
Sure.
Yeah.
How much do they weigh?
Pyke is probably like 95, 100, and Gianni's probably 85.
Big boy.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Yes.
And okay, so we got a resource guarder, and then Gianni, no issues.
No, he more so just picked up on he picked up on learning how to defend himself, and he won't back down either, but he's usually the one that gets hurt in the process, but he will defend himself if necessary. But he's never he's very rarely ever like the aggressor. Sure. But he will defend himself. But like he does instigate sometimes in a playful manner, and then it can escalate because Pyke won't like it. But he is kind of like a playful instigator, but never like, not much of an aggressor, like on a negative way. Sometimes he wants to play and he just like gets a little rough. Sure. But he won't ever like go after him. But Gianni does like to pounce on people, and we've been trying to work on that. And he is not okay with children, and we want to work on that as well.
What kind of behavior with children?
He does not like kids at all. Like he doesn't like them being by him. Like he will lunge at them. Thank God nothing has ever happened, but he will lunge at them, or like, I just don't want him around kids, to be honest, because we'll be on walks and he has lunged at a child or like wants to like nip at them. And then Pyke, what happens then is, because Pyke is such a protector, he will start fighting with Gianni to like take him off the child, or like, or anybody he's like going towards, and then they start fighting and it turns ugly. Sure. And it's terrifying for anybody around, because people might take it as they're coming at them, but they're actually fighting each other. Sure. And that's what we're trying to, regain focus, and we're trying to regain attention and control of them when they do go in these episodes, because other than that, they're very smart, and like they're very good with basic commands, and like for the most part they're well-behaved dogs, but we want to be able to control that. Even when people walk by, if like another dog walks by, it has to be a bigger dog, and it has to be a dark dog, but Pyke will lose it on our patio and they want to jump out of the gate. And they can easily do the jump, and we don't want that anymore either. And that's what we wanted to work on, is understanding boundaries and being able, like, we don't think that dogs shouldn't bark. I mean, that's what they do. Yeah. But we'd want them to know how to turn it on and off. And when we say, hey, we're okay, that they're going to stop. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because, I mean, they're natural protectors. So that's a lot of what we struggle with them is like it's on the patio because we spend a lot of time out there because it's our only outdoor space.
Sure.
And it's a small area, but yeah, we want them to be able to control themselves when there's a person or a dog passing by or a child, and we don't ever want them to jump. And they have before, and they've never got into anybody, thank God. But that we want to prevent it before we get there.
Okay. Anything else?
What was I gonna mention? So basically just regaining attention, like if we're at the dog park and it's time to go home, like they think it's time to play when we wanna leash them back up to leave.
Okay, yeah.
So getting them to come back, and then just getting them to understand personal space too of like our guests or others. They will do, like if we have guests over, which we probably enable that too because we let them hang out on the couch with us, but they think that they can just be in everyone's personal space.
Sure.
And we want to be able to, you know, get a hold of that.
Okay. Anything else?
As of now that I can think of, no, that's the only thing. Yeah, just the aggression on Pyke and getting them to like stop a fight or not even, you know, to prevent fights.
Okay. And they're both neutered?
Both neutered.
Okay. So this stuff is pretty standard stuff. Nothing out the ordinary, really. So the resource guarding is easy in the sense that it's context-based, right? You know, if there's food or a toy around, 9 times out of 10, food, that's what's going to trigger Pyke, right? So we can do things to prevent that, okay? Because that just makes your life easier. Now, when it comes to resource guarding with dogs, it's a little bit trickier in the sense that, like, I can't teach Pyke how to share things. Okay.
Oh, no, we don't let them share. Like they eat separately in their crate,
Okay.
and
Sure.
they're okay with that. Yeah.
Okay. But like that's sometimes like let's say when the dog's resource guarding a toy,
Mm-hmm.
I was like I can't make that dog like another dog being nearby.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I should say I can't do it because I can do it me, but it's the owner because it's so nuanced that it's hard for them to be able to read dog behavior to the degree that I can, that they could trust their dog like playing fetch with another dog when typically they would go bananas over the ball whenever a dog approached.
Yeah, Pyke is pretty good. Sorry to interrupt you. So when it comes to toys, it's been I think I've only seen him resource guard a toy like literally 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
They go to the doggy park a lot. We take them to the beach a lot. They love playing with other dogs. And like, there's dogs that sometimes like try to even hang on Pyke's like neck or like try to bark, and it doesn't faze him.
Sure.
A big amounts of dogs, like he's fine. Like we've never had issues.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's toys there and like there's no problem. But yeah, it's mostly with the food.
The food. And like, so if a fight happens over food, like how does that end up happening?
So for example, we were just camping the other day, and my cousin had their sister. She was there too, and she was feeding them, and I fed the boys in their crates. And then when they were done eating, I didn't realize that the other dog was eating in the kitchen.
Oh.
And I let the dogs out, and all I heard, and Pyke went to go try to eat her food while she was eating, and right there and then he snaps, and he will say, "This is mine," no matter even if it's not his.
Sure.
And then he nicked her, and like she has a huge gash on her forehead, and he always like ends up nicking a dog, but it's just him establishing like dominance all the time on the food.
Right.
And no matter what that means, even if like, you know, we don't intentionally put anything to share. Right. Or let's say like food falls off the ground or off the kitchen while I'm cooking, and they both see it, like he'll go for blood. You're like, it's what he does.
Okay. All right. So that makes a bit more sense. So part of that would be, as a dog owner, like just awareness, right? I'm not saying that you aren't aware.
No, yes.
I always like double check things. You know, I always assume things as well. So like if I have a dog and that's seemingly sweet and all that stuff, I just assume maybe a resource guarder might become territorial over this, this, and this, and this, right? Until I've been with that dog long enough and seen enough interactions where I go, okay, you're not a resource guarder, or you don't care about sharing toys, you don't care about, you know, food, blah, 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 right? And then like in that setting, because there was an extra dog, right? It was her sister's dog. Then like me personally, it's, I'm gonna let the dogs out. I know I have a resource guarder checking like, hey, like these guys are done eating. Are they?
Yeah, and I'm usually on top of that. I just didn't know she was eating in the kitchen because we had different rooms. She was literally outside of the room, and all I heard is like the little like food in the bowl. And next thing I heard, yeah, and then I heard like, rrr, and then we broke it up right away. Like luckily, like my friend was in the kitchen and he was able to grab Pyke, which I was shocked. But and then we figured it out. But of course, unfortunately, Ellie got nicked, and then yeah, I felt terrible because I'm like, you know, I should have checked. But yeah, we try our best to like make sure, like even when we got on the trip, like, hey, like it's everyone is well aware of Pyke's issue, or like sometimes if he starts getting tired and cranky, he's gotten into like a tiff and like he's hurt his other friend dog. But it's very rare for that. But yeah.
Okay. So then what we would do with the resource guarding in that sense is like teaching them, if you drop food, nobody gets it.
Yes.
Okay, like this is with no words. This is just a default rule of if food falls on the ground and he tries to go for it, there's going to be consequence, which creates a default. I don't want anything to do with any food on the ground. Okay. So that part in a sense is easy, but I always tell people you still want to always, again, double check. We do that default as a kind of added precaution because life's going to happen, right? And you know, you might forget, or maybe somebody else isn't aware or something, and they drop food on the ground, or they drop food for the dogs. You know, I remember I used to go to a dog park in the South Loop, and a dog walker used to come in and drop treats on the ground, and there'd be like 10 dogs there, and I'm like, well, that's like the stupidest thing ever. Like, why would you do that, right? So stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Is we put this precaution there so that in case we have a slip up, in case there's a dumbass at the dog park who does that, then it kind of kicks into play, as opposed to just going, I already taught my dogs to not do it, and expecting it to be a very 100% consistent thing, because no animal is 100% consistent, right? Including humans. So in terms of addressing the resource guarding in that sense, that's actually easier. If it was like toy related, then I just teach the dog that whenever another dog's around to like relinquish the toy, and then we just avoid the conflict altogether. Or teaching the owner a release command. So like if Pyke were to grab something, maybe like he snuck it and you weren't able to see it or whatever, and you see him and you command the word out, he just spits it out and leaves, and it's done. Okay. So the resource guarding, it's easier in a sense because it's context based. So we know when to expect it or avoid it, but then also just teaching the simple rule of you can't have anything, period, unless we give it to you, is like the backup just in case something happens. Okay. The territorial reactivity on the patio, I'm not too worried about that. With Gianni and like the jumping or the pouncing on people, not worried about that. The lunging at kids, I'm not too worried about the lunging because that's easily corrected, and I'll explain how we go about that. But it would be more so along the, what would be more difficult is if Gianni is legitimately not fond of children, right? Is addressing the symptom, like the lunging or whatever that he does, it's easy because it's just, you know, stopping the lunging. The hard part is if he is lunging because he dislikes children, is rewiring the dislike and making him like children. That makes sense? So I have exercises that I've gone over with people for dogs that don't like children, okay? At the end of the day, we can't make him like children, okay? That's him. So it's kind of like for a human, like if you don't like something, the only person that can change that is you, right? And maybe you have an experience with something and you're like, oh, I was totally wrong about it. I actually really do like it, right? Like, but you do that. Yeah. No one can force you to like something, right? So it's the same thing for dogs. I can't force them. I have exercises and things that we can do to see, can we make it happen? But sometimes it just doesn't, right? So I told the owner, like, don't worry about it, in the sense that now you know you've tried it. The dog just does not like kids. But we're not worried about the dog lunging or anything like that towards a kid because of the control that we have. Okay, so then it's like if a child comes and goes, oh, can I pet Gianni? We go, no. And then we just keep going about our day.
Yeah.
Okay. The personal space thing, not a big deal either. It's pretty simple. So the behavior stuff that you have here for me is pretty minor. Of course, they have pity, so that could prove me wrong. Pity is when I have an intensity about them. So I always tell everybody, you know, if you have an anxious pity or a nervous pity or a fearful one, the intensity that was bred into them, you know, for fighting, fuels these behaviors, you know. So definitely when I come into a place, an aggressive German Shepherd and aggressive Pit Bull are very different animals. Doesn't mean they can't be addressed, but it's a little bit hard. They're tougher, they're more resilient. They tend to be a little bit more work in order to get it resolved. I have a Pit Bull. I love pitties. I work with them all the time. But that is something I've just learned throughout 10 years of working with dogs. So before reaching out, did you guys do any research on me?
Yeah, so that's kind of why I reached out to you. I obviously thoroughly read your reviews and like what your program's about, and I read on the aggression, and that's kind of why I reached out. There was one particular review that I read from a couple that had 2 pitties, and like they basically had kind of the same issues we had, but on a grander scale, and it sounded like you really helped them out. So that's kind of why we reached out, and that's what really caught my attention. And especially with Pyke, because the weird part about him is he is such a sweet boy, and it's like Jekyll and Hyde with him, because when he is on 100, like it's 100 and it's bad. Like I have bruises and marks on me from, he will never attack me, but I'll get hurt in the process of trying to calm him down. Right. Or somebody, like my neighbor's coming home, because our patios are like literally next to each other. So they literally can greet you at the entrance. So like they're jumping up, and because they both want the attention, they're very competitive for attention. So they'll both start like, oh, attention. And then they're like, no, I want the attention. And they turn against each other. And then in that process, I'm trying to control them and restrain them. And then I get scratched up, like they've got claws and all that stuff. So it's basically like, that's how we want to just no more aggression, like no more us getting hurt, no more them getting hurt. Like when you meet Gianni, like my poor baby, he's like Scarface. Like he has all these little like nicks, like when they were puppies, like it was a lot worse. I mean, they still go at it, but yeah, like I just don't want anyone getting hurt anymore. And God forbid, actually yesterday I had a situation, which is crazy because I reached out 2 days ago, I think. But I was really distraught yesterday. I was coming in from walking the dogs, and we were literally 5 feet from our patio. And we're walking in, and there's an elderly black dog, and every time that dog walks by, Pyke loses it. I don't know why. Like there's certain dogs he loses it over. And our rope leashes, they had chewed them up, and I had him on the track leash, and I was wearing slides, and he like lunged and pulled me, and he's strong, and I have both of them, and I slipped, and he went for the dog, and instead of wanting to say hi, because usually it's like an aggressive, like I want to say hi, and then they pause, say hi, sniff each other, he like went for the dog's neck, and I freaked out, and like he wanted to attack this dog, and we've never seen Pyke do such a thing without like a resource involved. So I felt terrible. Like the owner got on the ground with his dog and like shielded him, and it was super dramatic. And I finally got a hold of my dogs, and I took him in. I'm like, are you okay? Him and his dog were fine, but they were like terrified. And I still can't get this guy's face out of my head. And I'm just like apologizing. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't want this to escalate. And I just don't want this something to be Pyke develops and we want to nip it in the butt now versus later. So yeah, so that's kind of what I'm dealing with. And we have them on the prong collars. They use we had a trainer for like a little bit. We had to let her go, different story for another day. But Yeah, so she got us started on like basic stuff with them, and like she got us on we had the giant prongs and we didn't know those weren't the right ones. So she got us on the little smaller ones.
Mhm.
So Pyke is on that and it works fairly well for the most part. We use a rope leash, like the hike leash, the thick, like the thick leash, you know what I mean? So we use that and it usually works, but if they do get excited or want to pull, like we want to work on that a little more.
Okay.
They do know like the corrective, like when you correct them a little on the leash.
Mhm.
So they'll know like when I do that, they'll either sit for the most part, depending like how much their excitement took over. But yeah, that happened yesterday. So that's kind of where we're at. And that lake trip thing, like how he nicked his sister. So I'm just like, it's frustrating because he's the most well-behaved one out of both of them. And he even like puts Gianni in check all the time. Like because Gianni's really rambunctious and he'll put him in check. So I just don't want like his protective behavior to like, just keep going worse. And I don't know what his deal is with some certain dogs. Like it's just certain dogs. There's dogs that'll walk past and it doesn't even faze him. And then there's dogs where he loses it. And I'm just like, and then because he's losing it, the other one feeds into it.
And then possibly the redirect and then.
Yeah, and it's just not a good time. And then I just don't want, anything to ever happen. And on top of it with their breed, like I don't want them living up the stereotype to anybody ever, somebody to tell us like, oh, it's just typical pit bull German shepherds, like look at them, they're aggressive and violent. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, I mean, I'm sorry to hear all that happened yesterday and what's been happening.
Yeah.
Good thing is that I deal with this crap all the time. So, all right, good. So you did your research. So you know that I use e-collars, correct?
We have one too. They broke, so we need to get new ones. I think we overcharged them. It's the one with the sound, vibrate, and shock. We don't use the shock, but I guess you can tell me about what you do with the collars.
Sure. So before I talk about the collars, the ones that you had, do you remember roughly how much you paid for them?
It was they were on Amazon. They were like the ones, it's like a neon orange one and a black one with a little thing, and it was probably like for both of them, I think either 25 to 40 bucks. We got them a while back, but it came with two.
So I can tell you right now that those are garbage. Okay. But I'm going to educate you on all that stuff, okay? Because I want to make sure that the brands that I use, I'm not expecting to hear like they broke or something like that. They're very good quality. But I'll educate you, okay? So the ones that you had previously are most likely more along the lines of what we would call a shock collar, okay? Professionals like myself, we use what we call an e-collar. The difference between the two, okay, is that shock collars either one have settings going up to maybe 10, whereas my collar goes up to 127, okay? And 10 and 127 would be the same power, but I have 117 more breaks in between each number, okay? So I can really fine tune it, whereas with the one that goes to 10, 3 could be too high where the dog is yelping, but 2 is too low where the dog's not listening. Okay, so for mine, if 40 is too high and I go down to 30 and it's too low, well, now I got 35, 36.
Is it shock or vibrate though with the
e-collar? So the difference is the vibration is like a cell phone vibration, okay? The tone is simply that beeping sound that it makes. The shock that you're talking about is what we call stimulation, okay? So it's not electrocution. It's not like sticking your finger in an outlet. It's not like a taser, okay? It's electric, but not electricity is how I like to phrase it to people, okay? So have you ever been to a chiropractor or a physical therapist? Nope.
Not yet.
So have you ever seen on TV, like they'll have those commercials for like getting abs while watching TV and you'll see the person's abs moving, but like they're not doing anything?
Yeah.
Okay. So that machine is what's called a TENS unit, okay? And it sends a short electric current where the two things are making contact and it moves the muscle, okay? So the person's not being electrocuted, but the muscle is being stimulated through the electric current, okay? So the e-collar is that same technology. Okay. So the reason why the stim or the shock is effective is because dogs, as you know, are physical animals. And Pyke is giving you very good examples. He's using physicality to resolve the issue of like, when I'm eating, stay away, right? Or if for whatever reason he decides he sees a dog that he dislikes, you know, he becomes reactive, potentially aggressive. He's saying, hey, I don't like you, get out of our space. And he's using physicality to get that point across, okay? Your prong collars are meant to do that. They're meant to mimic a dog bite. The problem is they take a lot of technical skill, or if you know you have very large dogs, if physically you can't control them, or even if you give your hardest correction, I always tell people dogs relate things to dog bites, right? So even if you give your hardest yank, it would never really ever match a dog bite because that punctures and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So even though the dog might stop in the moment or de-escalate a bit, I don't want to see that dog do that behavior again, period. Right? Like, I don't want to have to go out worrying about, I hope I don't see that dog that he doesn't like. You know, I'm going out with, I know my dog's going to behave himself.
Yeah, I want to be able to walk past the dog and like, they be cool. You know,
right. So the reason why e-collar is effective with this is it removes physical strength. We don't have to worry about strength. It's mental game is what I tell people. It's not so much about, like, if you see trainers, like they use a lot of physical, you know, with the controlling the dog with the prong, they'll have the leash really short and stuff. And ideally what I'm looking for is a completely slack leash with no tension. And if I take one step, the dog takes one step. I take 5 steps, the dog takes 5 steps. When I stop, the dog automatically sits. This is no words. Okay, I don't care what the environment is. I don't care if there's dogs, strollers, rollerbladers, kids, you know, people barbecuing. That's the attention that I'm wanting. Okay. I don't care so much about the obedience other than the fact of the discipline that comes behind it. Okay. So the e-collar is our means of biting Pyke and Gianni at the press of a button. Okay. And let's say Pyke decides to go bonkers and you have the correct collar, you should be able to override the reactivity to shut it down. Okay. So behavior is easy in the sense that dogs, they really teach like what not to do. Right. So when Pyke's eating, he says, don't get near me. So as long as you don't get near him, there's no problem. Right. And he's using an aversive to teach that, which is I will bite you.
Yeah.
So in return, you got to think like him. And it's like, okay, Pyke, you know, theoretically, we always start with leash walking first to see what does it fix. Okay. Because it'll fix a lot of issues. It won't fix the resource guarding because that's a separate context. But like the reactivity, the lunging at kids, or maybe want to jump on a person that they just met because they don't have any manners yet, the leash walking would most likely resolve those issues. Okay. So the first class, I teach you how to teach your dog how to walk my style. Mm-hmm. I give you your homework, and I'll tell you, you know, in the meantime, like, how do you say, you have control, but avoid certain situations while you're learning. Okay. And like, let's say you can't help it and you see a couple of dogs that Pyke doesn't like, but then you come back week 2 and you're like, Jesse, we saw dogs and he didn't react to them. And normally he would lunge and bark. And I go, great, you know, we've made progress. And then we go to, you know, I teach you the second half of things and I'll tell you, do your homework, let me know how it goes. And if by week 3, there's like a particular thing that is not resolving itself. And you're like, we're still struggling with kids walking past Gianni, right? I go, okay, now this week, when you see that happen, we're going to give consequence to Gianni for the behavior itself. So think of it as like, I was raised old school, I was spanked. So, you know, if I talk back to my mom, I got spanked. If I got bad grades, I got spanked. If I didn't clean my room, I got spanked, right? So it's one consequence for a multitude of behaviors. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of doing the same thing to Gianni. We go, okay, we taught you what we need you to do, which is walk like a good dog, you know, all that stuff. But for whatever reason, he decides that lunging at kids is more important than what you've taught him to do, he's still going to lunge. So then we go, okay, well, now here's a consequence for doing that behavior. And we're making it so that he doesn't want to lunge because he doesn't want the consequence. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely.
Okay. So like, you know, if Gianni lunged at another person's dog and that dog snapped back and kicked his ass, that dog just taught him, like, you don't mess with me. And the next time Gianni sees that dog, he might be like, no conflict, right? That's how it works, okay? So when it comes to using the e-collar, it's an aversive, okay? It's uncomfortable. And when people use it or they think about using it, they're scared that they're gonna screw up their dog psychologically. They're scared that it's electrocuting them and it's like the electric chair, right? And I'm like, no, like it's not that at all. You definitely want a professional when you work with these tools. But when it comes to stopping behaviors, it's simpler in the sense of it's just don't do that.
Yeah. So, and I'm not opposed to it, you know, based on what you're telling us. And obviously the first trainer didn't work out for a reason, but she did mention to us, which you can correct my concern.
Sure.
But she did mention to us, because we told her that we used the collar that we used, going with all the settings, but we used vibration. We never used the shock feature. But she was like, no, don't use those collars. She mentioned the psychological thing. And then she's like, you're going to teach your dog to depersonalize them when they're wearing it. And they're going to feel like, oh, for example, if I'm teaching him not like when Jesse comes over, then I'm going to buzz him so he relaxes, that every time Jesse comes over, they're going to hate Jesse and it's going to become a negative thing. But then again, like I said, there's a reason she's not around.
No, she doesn't know what she's talking about.
Okay.
So, because if she did, I wouldn't be here.
For sure. Wait, sorry, ADD. One last thing too that I wanted to mention to you about Pyke. Two things. Gianni also hates, they both hate like skateboards and scooters.
Yep.
And then also Pyke kind of freaks me out. Like, I'm not scared of my dogs, but sometimes when like you're telling Pyke, like, hey, it's time to go in your crate, or it's time to do something, or get off the bed, and he either wants to play, he'll start playing, or like he does this thing where he talks back and he like gets in your face. Like he barks and like full mouth right here. And I'm like scared he's going to bite me one day.
Sure.
He has never like, they only playful bite, like they'll gnaw on your arm. They do a lot of that. Gianni's obsessed with it. But I do want to work on Pyke talking back and like being aggressive towards us.
Sure.
When we're asking stuff of him. And then he usually will like have an episode, talk back, and then like freak out and run to his crate. So anyway, just throwing that in there.
Sure. No, so, and that's one thing that I picked up about Pyke is that he's a bully. I mean, that's what he's doing to you, is he's bullying you.
Yeah, he bullies me sometimes. He bullies me. He only does it when like he like wants to talk back. Like he's got attitude, but for the most part, like he's like a cuddler. Like right now, he'll usually be laying there and they freak out. Like they jump on our glass windows because all of our front door is glass. He like violently jumps at the window when he sees a dog he doesn't like.
Sure. Yeah, it's being territorial. That's normal. I mean, you can stop it, but it's normal.
Okay. So yeah, just want to make sure that I'm hitting all the points while I have you on.
Oh, yeah, and all this stuff, like it's common. Like this is not out the ordinary. So when it comes to like when you're maybe trying to discipline him or you're trying to put him in the kennel or whatever, and he's like barking back and stuff, it's like a kid. We call it protest.
Yeah.
Right. But essentially, like he's trying to assert himself as well, and the more of the times that he wins, which means he goes unchecked, the ego grows.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody, it's like a bully, like a kid bully. Like if no one puts the kid in his place, he just bullies more and more. Until one day, some kid kicks his ass, and the bully goes, "Okay, I'm not that tough. I'm not as tough as I thought I was." Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing in the dog world. Okay. So when it comes to the e-collar and behavior and like all that association stuff, like that's not true. Okay. I've built my career using e-collar, and all my dogs over 6 months, so puppies 6 months and up, get trained on e-collar when they train with me.
Okay.
Because it's easy for the owner, it's effective for the owner. They get off-leash reliability, and as long as we have the right collar for the dog, like I had a lady, she had a 140, 150 pound dog reactive Great Dane, and she was 90 pounds, if that. She was tiny, right? And e-collar and prong collar, and she's walking her dog no problem. Okay, but because we had the right tools, right? And it's because the way people approach things is incorrect. When people think prong or e-collar, they typically think punish the dog. Okay? And the difference between how I train and how punishment works is most people think you say sit. If the dog doesn't sit, you shock them. Okay, it doesn't work that way because they're too far apart. If you sit, I give you treats. If you don't sit, I'm gonna punish you. And the dog cannot connect that like a human could, right? So like my mom could tell me, Jesse, you better finish all your homework by the end of the night or I'm gonna spank you. And I could connect that and I go, I better get my homework done because I don't want that spanking at the end of the evening, right? My mom was very strict. So dogs don't learn that way. What we do is what's called pressure work, okay? Have you ever pulled up and pressed down, like pulled up on the collar and then pressed down on their butt to make them sit?
That's what they do. That's how they learn to sit.
Sure. With the prong?
When we're at a stoplight and I say sit, and if they don't listen, I just give them a little upward pull on the prong,
Sure.
and they sit right away.
Sure. So when you do that, you're using pressure, but it's prong pressure, okay? But as soon as their butt hits the ground, you would relieve that pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing with e-collar.
I just do like a pop.
Excuse me?
I just do like a pop and then they like.
Yeah. So it's the same thing with e-collar. And the thing is, we start low, we work our way up. So I don't come in very high and like just start zapping the dogs all over the place. We have to find their working number, which is the number that they respect. That's going to keep them in check no matter what the environment is. Okay. So, it goes 0 to 127. And let's say we're working with Pyke and on day 1, his number is 80, right? Which is high. But he's doing everything perfectly and he's at attention.
Hold on. Sorry, I hear licking. Hold on.
Sure.
What are you eating? False alarm. Sorry.
You're fine. So we start low, we work our way up. Let's say Pyke's number is 80. And he's doing everything perfect. Okay. So in that context, 80 is the number. But we start low and we work our way up, and I don't just jump in at 80. Okay. Every dog's personality type and sensitivity level is different. Pyke's could be lower and Gianni's could be higher. They could be the same low, they could be the same high, or it could be reverse. Okay. So once they associate what the collar is, we shouldn't see the reactivity. We shouldn't see the lunging and barking. Okay. If we see, like, let's say you see a dog coming and you see Pyke or Gianni and they got a look in their eye and you're like, oh crap, this is usually when it happens, then you'd want to correct right there. You wouldn't want to wait till he's already lunging and barking. Okay, because the sooner you catch them, the easier your life is in terms of keeping them under control. And eventually the brain won't go to that degree because you're the one that's regulating it. And they think, well, and the dog thinks, if I even think about being reactive, there's a consequence. I'm not even going to think about it.
So we kind of touched on that too, and and we'll do the correction like that. We get in those scenarios, and they do like they'll sit, and it's almost like they're waiting for release, but they get a release that wasn't given to them. And when a dog walks by, I'll pull over to the side of the sidewalk or wherever on the grass, and I'll pull them and they'll like gentlemen sit. But like as soon as the dog gets closer, as soon as they feel like they want to go, then they just go.
Right, because the prong collar can only go so far with your intensity. Okay. Right, that's what you're struggling with. And I actually have a client right now. They have a 5 to 6 month old golden doodle. It's an older couple. They're like 60s, 70s maybe. And last class they were yanking the dog all over the place. Yeah. And he was still like, I want to look at that dog and I want to stare at them playing baseball or whatever. Right. Completely not focused. And they were yanking him all over the place. And I told him, like, you know what, you should just switch to e-collar because I can tell dog's not phased.
Mhm.
Even though it's a 5 to 6 month old golden doodle, the dog could care less about your corrections, right? The e-collar allows us to break what you're describing, which is I see it all the time. The dog's doing the mechanical response, which is put my butt down, but the brain is still stuck on I'm gonna lunge at that dog, right? We want to shut it down completely. Or when they put that butt down and whatever's going on, the dog's like, none of our business. Okay. But e-collar is a tool that lets us do that because we can match the dog. So if your dog is at a 20 on the brain, and even if you're really good and you give your harshest correction at a 10, 10 will never match 20. Yeah. You're going to have that constant problem. Okay. And afterwards, I suggest, so if you go to my YouTube channel, we've been recording all our training sessions. We have uncut videos of me working with dogs from ground zero with the owner, and you get to see it real time, like, oh, this is what he's talking about. And I have one in particular. His name is Mac. It's a pit bull. He just started a couple of weeks ago, and he was both human and dog reactive. And the lady ends up going up to like 75 or 85 for the first session, but he's doing everything spot on. And you see dogs walk by, and he tries to go for it, and she corrects him, and he just pulls back. And by the second class, like he's not even doing anything with the dogs anymore because the consequence was appropriate to him. So he respected it.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, so e-collar, it has a bad rap because either people misused it. The old psychology or methodology around e-collar is not where like it is today. It's changed quite a bit. The tool itself has made great advances. Like I said, there's some that go to 10. Now they go to 127, which gives you that much more kind of just a gray area to work with to fit the dog's specific personality type. Okay. So the way I would approach this is the first thing, again, we will teach is the leash walking to see what it fixes. The lunging at kids. So if you're at, like, let's say you're walking past kids at the park and that would be tough for Gianni, that shouldn't be a problem. The reactivity would be coupled into that. Jumping on people that they would see, to be friendly or whatever, would be addressed in that as well. Okay. If not, then it's our baseline or it's our foundation, so that the dogs have an association of what's expected of them. And if they decide to still be reactive, well, now we have to provide consequence, for the behavior itself. Okay. The territorialness in the patio, there's two ways of working about that. So again, with behavior, it's just consequence, right? So if someone walks up to the patio and one of them starts barking, we would just give a correction saying, you don't bark when someone approaches the patio. Okay. Now, then there's like the whole security thing, and I'll talk about that and how we can work around it so you don't kill security, but you're addressing the behavior, right? If I'm out on the patio with the dogs, there should be no reactivity or territorial behavior because I'm present. Okay, I'm the authority at that point. So to give you an example, when I lived in Texas, I had 5 dogs and I had a yard. And when they were in the yard, if I was not present, they would bark at any little thing that walked by. Okay, if they were barking and I walked out, they would shut up. Or if I was present with them, they wouldn't bark, period. So my presence alone for them was like, oh, dad's here. We don't worry about who walks by the yard. That's dad's responsibility. But when I was gone, because my eyes weren't there, they were my eyes. So they would bark up a storm. Do you see that? So you can teach that to a dog where it's like when you're present, it's not their responsibility to do that. Okay. Now, if we remove you and we know they will bark when someone approaches, the issue you would have there is, well, you have security, right? But if they're both out there, what if they're barking and they redirect to each other? Okay, so that's a potential problem there. So the way to address the fighting with each other is actually not to let them get to that state. Okay. Can you excuse me for one moment? I have an important call. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Hello? Can you try looking him up and giving him a call? right, thanks, sorry. Thank you, sorry.
I brought the boys so you can say hi.
Oh, let's take a look here.
Come here, Pikey. Come here, Pikey. He doesn't like coming on the chair. There he goes.
Oh, I see. He's a big boy.
Yeah, they just heard somebody outside.
Yeah, the tricky part would be,
There you go. Say hi, Bob. Say hi, Gianni.
he's all perched on his stoop.
Yeah, they're stoop boys for sure.
Is if they're out there unattended and somebody walks by and they start barking, teaching them to bark but not fight afterwards is not going to happen. Okay, so we'd have to figure out what you would want to do with that, because when you're present, no problem, they won't bark. But if you want the security and leaving them out there, in my book, I don't do that, because you're going to have fighting unless one's out there by themselves, and that's different. Okay, because the best way to address things is always to prevent it from happening. So if I'm out there with them and they can't lunge or bark at somebody approaching the patio, then we don't get the fight. That makes sense? The other thing we could do is put it on verbal control as well, where it's like if somebody approaches and you say quiet, then they just stop barking. But then you have to always say quiet in order to address them before it escalates to the dog fight. Okay? So that's where things get tricky, is that if you're not there to say quiet, then technically they can bark, right? But then if the longer that barking goes on, potentially you risk the redirected aggression.
Yeah, see, I would love that. I think I almost like verbal better, because it's very rare they're unattended on the patio. I guess for the simple fact, because of the fear that they're going to jump over.
Sure.
I guess now I'm just thinking out loud, and you can kind of help us decide that along the way. But I mean, yeah, I do like the fact that of the security part, and I like that I can shut it down. But like you said, I don't want it to escalate as much. On the patio, it usually just escalates if like they want to play with the dog, like if they both want to like go say hi to it.
Sure.
But usually it's just like one of them like on each side of it, like on top of the gate, and being like, just barking and barking and barking.
Gotcha.
But it's very rare for them to start fighting on there. So I think I'd probably want to do, I don't know, maybe verbal, but we can figure it out.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways of working around it. It's just, when we get dogs that redirect towards each other, that's what makes things tricky.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't for that, it'd be a lot easier.
Yeah, it's usually with another person or a dog involved when they get redirected, and it just, people get so scared because it's just intense, but.
Sure.
Yeah. And then how does it work? Like, how do you do your whole training process, unless you want to keep filling me in on what you're saying, and then I can ask my questions.
No, that's fine. So we've changed things because of the whole epidemic, which is why we're doing a Zoom. Is that we've been doing verbal instruction classes, and we've been doing them at Oz Park, because have you been to Oz Park before?
I'm not sure.
What area are you in?
We're right by like Pilsen, like on the border of Pilsen and Little Italy, by like the police station.
Oh, sure.
In Blue Island.
Oh, yeah. I used to live around there.
Yeah.
I used to live at 24th in California, so I'm familiar with the area.
Yeah.
So Pilsen, Oz Park is in Lincoln Park.
Okay, are you over there?
We're in Logan Square, actually. Our facility is, but we've been working in Oz Park because there's tons of distractions. There's dogs, people, kids, strollers, bikers, rollerbladers, baseball games, everything is there. So for our clients, it's very realistic in terms of the environment that they're practicing in. So, because like most trainers, it's like we work in a quiet environment or an empty room and stuff, and your dog does great in the empty room, or maybe in a group setting when there's other dogs, but it's very controlled. But then once you go outside, it's like the dog forgot everything. And it's not that the dog forgot. It's just that the training's level of reliability was very low.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I don't care where we train because of the tool that I'm using. I know I can get it to happen as long as the owner follows my instructions.
Yes.
So for the people that have traveled to us, I'm like, if you can train your dog here and get your dog to listen, everywhere else is going to be a piece of cake.
Okay.
Okay. And then like for Gianni, like we have the benefit of like, there's always kids running around and stuff like that. So like you're being worked in the environment. So like when you go outside of training, it's applicable because you got hands-on experience already. Okay. And what determines the length of time or how I approach things is simply what the owner is wanting. Okay. So I don't teach what you don't need or what you don't want.
Okay.
So what I'm picking up here is obviously the reactivity, the resource guarding, the kids thing, which is like the behavioral stuff, right? The barking, I'm not too worried about. Yeah, everything else is pretty standard stuff. So like the lunging at kids, the reactivity and the resource guarding would be like the variables, okay? I have an idea of how long it takes, but sometimes it may take you a little bit longer, sometimes a little bit shorter. It all depends, okay?
They're really smart. Like if you get, like as soon as you get through to them, they're very, very smart. Just
Okay.
throw that out there.
So I have 6, 9, and 12-week programs, okay? If you did the 6-week program, which is 1 day a week, okay, 1 lesson a week, so 6 lessons total, plus we added 2 Zoom sessions. So you're really getting you're getting 6 in person or 2 Zoom sessions.
I'm writing this down, sorry.
Sure, no, you're fine.
Okay. So 1 time a week, and then that's an hour and a half, right? I think Maria told me it's 1 hour for a dog, and then you add an extra 30 minutes.
It's an hour, and then you can pay for an extra half an hour for the additional dog.
So would they both be training at the same time in that 1 hour, or how does that work if you add the half hour?
If I have the extra half hour, we do 45 minutes, 45 minutes.
So you split it in 2, and then you individually work with them, or you do it both?
I coach you.
So you coach me, and then we coach. Okay, yeah. You're basically training us.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, my boyfriend will be my homework to you, where I think I would want, and I don't care saying this in front of him either, but I would need your support in that, where like you need to be very like, hey man, like you need to follow this at home and be consistent, because
sure.
I'm like the evil parent and he's the cool parent, because he lets them get away with everything and like they love him. They're such daddy's boys, but like, for example, like he plays tug of rope with their leashes and then they destroy them later on, and then he wonders why. And I'm like, well, you're teaching them they can destroy their leashes. Or like when he gets home, he enables them jumping on him, and I'm like, you can't enable them to jump on you, because then they think they could jump on other people.
Right.
And stuff like that. And he's like, oh, it's fine. He's one of those it's fine people. And then finally, like he's starting like after yesterday, like I'm like for real, like we need to stick to this, like what the trainer says, we have to do it and be consistent. So he's going to be part of your homework for me, because like, and he means well by it. He's just the cool parent, but we have monsters. Like we need to be consistent with them.
Right. So that's good to know. At the end of the day, I can't make him do stuff either, unfortunately.
So just iterate it to him. Just be like, hey,
but
like,
I will be blunt. You know,
blunt. Thank you.
The way I always put it to people is, if you don't reinforce this, at the end of the day, the dog is who pays.
Mm-hmm.
Dog is going to have to be euthanized.
Yes.
Right? I'm not going to say to euthanize your dog. The city will, when your dog gets a hold of another dog.
Yeah.
You know, that's just how it rolls. That's just how it works.
Yeah.
So with the 6-week program, it's 6 in person. We work at Oz Park. It's a great place to work. And then you get 2 Zoom sessions on top of that.
And then 1 hour, and then is the additional half hour optional or required?
It's optional.
Okay.
If you typically, from previous experience, people only need the half hour for the first 2 lessons.
Okay.
Okay, because once you understand the concepts, it's very simple to teach.
Okay.
Then I have my 9-week program, which is 9 classes plus 2, and then the 12-week, right? So if you did 6 classes, what I would anticipate we could cover is we want to cover the leash walking first, and that should cover the lunging at kids and the reactivity, okay? Because that's about 2 classes. Maybe a third if we're still struggling with a couple of things, okay? Now, if I come to learn that, you know, let's say you're on the 3rd session, you're like, Jesse, we're still struggling with this behavior. And then I have you go to like 95, right, to stop the behavior, and the dog stops. You then have to reinforce it.
Mm-hmm.
So then if you come back on week 4 and I go, how'd it go? And you say, Jesse, it was terrible. The dog was still being reactive. And I'll ask you, did you go to 95? And you say, no, we only went to 45. I'll say, well, that's not my problem. That's because you're not going where I told you to go, okay? Because you have to be willing to put a harsh enough consequence to shut the behavior down. Otherwise, the training doesn't matter. Because the dog goes like, you know, because when I used to train the dogs myself, I had no problem going maxed out if I needed to. But it was the owner. So then the dog associated it to me and was like, all right, when I know when Jesse's around, I'm not going to play. But I know when Jesse's gone, mom and dad aren't going to do it. So I'm going to be a jerk. Okay. So just want to keep that in mind that, you know, when I tell you certain things, I do it because I've done this for 10 years and that's what's going to get you to resolve the problem. Okay. So I would imagine 2 to 3 classes for the reactivity, which should handle the, you know, the lunging at kids and the leash reactivity. The next thing would be resource guarding. We can do that over a Zoom because it's really just information. If you wanted to work on the lunging at kids, like let's say he does good and he stops doing that, right? But you want to teach him to like kids.
Hold on, I hear him in the garbage. Hey. Sorry, they're really mischievous.
That's all right.
They like got toilet paper.
Oh, so if you want to work on Gianni and liking kids, I can show you the exercise, but it's typically 1 class, but you have to keep repeating it in order to get over that hump.
Okay.
Right. And what I would suggest is if that is something you know you want to do, I would start muzzle training them right away.
Okay.
Because you're going to have to ask people for their kids to touch your dog who doesn't like kids. Okay? So, and I've done this before. And
I already asked my best friend to lend me my godson. Trust me, I'm ahead of you. I was going to buy the muzzle and everything. Okay.
So we have videos that you can watch to train Gianni to like the muzzle. You definitely want to start that today. Okay. Don't wait till the last minute where it's the week before. You know, this isn't school where you can cram information, okay? Because I've had people do it, and then it's like, okay, the dog's got the e-collar on, we're bringing kids around that doesn't like kids, and we're putting a muzzle on the dog, and stress levels are just through the roof, okay? Now, I'll work through it, but then it's just like unpleasant for everybody because the dog's fighting the muzzle and like it's just all over the place, okay? So it's very simple. It's, you know, muzzle, put it on, treat type of stuff. And you do it every day as much as you can so that by the time we get there, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but at least you've done a lot of homework that'll make things a lot easier.
Okay. Will you send me the link for muzzles you recommend?
Yeah. Maria will send you an email with, I'll actually make a note. Maria will send you an email to a link to our website. It's training resources.
Okay.
And it talks about the prong collars that I recommend and I don't recommend, the e-collars I use and all that stuff. Okay.
So do any of these products not come included with your rates?
Correct. So think of the rate as my time and everything else is the tools that you need.
Okay.
So we got potentially one class for the kids thing. So that's 4 out of 6. Okay. The last 2, I almost always like to cover come when called. Okay. But if you're really focused on behavior, you're the boss. As long as the first 2 classes cover the leash walking and we get that foundation down, I can shape the program to cover the behavior stuff you have here. Okay.
I like the come when called for sure.
Okay. So the 9-week program, imagine it would be, the 2 to 3 classes for the leash walking reactivity, the class for the kid, and 2 classes on the recall, which puts us at 5. And then the resource guarding, and then we start to kind of delve into behavior a bit more in a bit more detail. Okay. The 12-week program is all that stuff, and then we push to off-leash reliability as much as possible if the owner wants, or we teach a lot more obedience. Okay. So like one thing that might benefit you, and we actually may be able to get this done in the 9-week program, pending everything goes smoothly, is let's say you're on the patio and you don't want the dogs to just jump up and lunge. We have correcting the behavior, which is one approach. Or you can tell them to lay down, and if they're laying down, they're not going to move for 2 to 3 hours or whatever length of time you're wanting, no matter what's going on. So you have what we call preventative control. Okay, so if the dog is laying down and respects that command, it doesn't matter if somebody walks up, the dog's not going to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you have one means of the dogs are free in the patio, they're free to walk around, but they can't jump and bark, right? Or you can stop it. Or you have, we're going to be out in the patio, I don't want to have to deal with you, go lay down and don't move, and it doesn't matter what comes by. Okay, so there's 2 ways of approaching it. There's no real right or wrong. It's just what's going to work best for the owner, what's going to work best for that particular context.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure that in the 9-week program, we'd most likely also be able to cover that. The 12-week is more so the total control, building up to off-leash reliability. Okay. But so what this would mean is like you could walk your dog off leash, come when called off leash, and come when called is always off leash. Otherwise it's pointless. But then like the other commands, like the sit, stay down, whatever is built to off leash reliability, but you have to do the homework.
So based on what we've talked about so far, and I'm sure we can kind of decide on the way, I'm getting the vibe that you're going to suggest the 9-week program. Do you think that's going to be good? I feel like you're leaning towards that. And
you're probably right in the middle, in terms of how do you say, getting the recall in, getting the leash walking and the behavior stuff, because the behavior is the variable. I have an idea of how long it's going to take, but I don't know. Okay.
Hello? Oh. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I've been waiting on like an important call. Anyway.
If it wasn't for the behavior stuff, obedience is real easy. Because it's just, what do you need? Okay, that's 6 classes. That's 12 classes, right? For you with the behavior, because you have the kids thing, you have the resource guarding, and the territorial or the reactivity. The territorial behavior, I'm not too worried about. The reactivity, those are the variables. Okay. So if it goes smoothly and they're doing great, I just keep teaching you more stuff.
Okay.
I don't limit it to like, oh, you only pay for 9 classes and this is what it comes with. If we get a lot of stuff done within 6 classes and you're like, we have 3 classes left, I keep teaching more stuff.
Oh, awesome.
Okay. Yeah, because you're just paying for my time. So I teach what I feel you need. We'll prioritize that first. And then if something happens and you're like, hey, like, Jesse, this happened and we're really concerned about it and we have to shift gears, I don't have a problem with that either. As long as we've covered the first class of the leash walking, I can, how do you say, change it as you need it.
Okay. I want to pull up your rates here too, just so I have them in front of me.
Yeah.
So if we do the 9-week, that one's in, hold on.
It should be 1175.
1175.
Yeah.
And then You said that I want to take your advice. Like, if you think we just need the additional half hours for the first 2 classes, and that's 70, right? Extra total.
70 total, correct? Because it's 35 for the half hour.
So plus 70, so 1175 plus 70, and then plus the tools that we need.
Yeah. So the collar I'm going to recommend to you is pricey. Okay, but it's going to last you a long time. I've had mine for 8 years, no issues other than the battery, because it's rechargeable lithium battery, it wears out.
Okay.
It's replaceable. Because you have 2 dogs and because you have 2 large dogs is the issue. Okay. I actually just saw it online and it was $399 for a 2-dog system, if I'm remembering correctly.
$300
$399 plus tax
for 1 dog.
for both.
For both. So $399 total includes 2.
Correct. So it's 1 remote for 2 dogs and 2 collars.
That's what we have, but it's probably the cheap version of that.
Yes. So you get what you pay for, essentially. Okay.
Sure, for sure. It has the remote and everything.
And the reason why you want that collar is because you have pitty mixes, and pitties are resilient, and they're over 70 pounds. And this collar is meant for that size dog and temperament. Okay. So it's an investment, but it's the best collar out there. Trust me, you'd rather have it and not have to worry about exchanging it, because I've had people like try a different collar and I'm like, I don't think it's going to work. And then they go 3 classes in, they wasted 3 classes, then they got to buy a whole new collar.
Okay.
You know? So, and we'll send you the link for that as well. I'll make a note here. Link for Dr. 502. And then of course, 135 of your fee here. So your total fee gets credited towards your program.
Okay.
Okay, so that does save you a little money there. And they're already on prong collars, correct?
Yeah, so right now Gianni's kind of on his temp prong. It's his first one we had when we first got them. So he has a giant one just because we lost the links to the little one.
Sure.
Pyke is on the tiny little one, the prong one, and then Gianni's just like on a giant one.
Sure.
For his walks.
Okay, so I would hold off on buying another prong for him. Just use what you have in the meantime, because I want to see how Pyke does on the smaller one.
Okay.
Because you're training 2 large dogs, we're going to use both in the prong and the e-collar. Think of the prong as kind of like you turn around the corner and then something happens and they become reactive, that you need immediate control.
Mm-hmm.
And the e-collar is what gets you mental control, but in that time frame of when you turn the corner and something's happening, you're not going to have the time to like fiddle with your remote. You're going to need your prong as a backup.
Okay.
And they're perfectly safe to use together. Like, the dog isn't electrocuted or anything like that. So all in, I mean, you'd be looking at probably just around 1,600, I think is what it looks like.
I just added it up. And then question with the e-collar. So I have noticed that even with the ones that we have, sometimes to chill them out, like I'll show it to them and they know what it is. They know what the collar is. And when we've put it on them, they do, I'm not trying to give that girl at all any backup, but I did notice that they do behave even without us using it. But if I put it on them, and it's like they just like desensitize, they just like stop, and they just lose their personality. And I've noticed it. So what happens also, and then when it's off, they're like, game over, like I'm free.
Right. So the reason why they are most likely shutting down is the way it was applied.
Okay.
And not that I don't come across it, because I do.
Mm-hmm.
But in order for a dog to get over the e-collar, it has to be used regularly.
Okay.
People tend to use it for the last resort.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the dogs never get, like, for me, so it's example, growing up, I was spanked, and I was spanked several times. And I got used to it, where it's like, okay, like if I do something bad, I get spanked. If I just don't do anything bad, I don't get spanked. So I was much more relaxed because I knew what not to do and what to do. Right. Mm-hmm. Same thing for the dog. Ideally, we don't ever want to put it on them when things are at their worst, because that's what creates the association. Okay. Now, one of the biggest things, or one of the most common questions I get is, when does the e-collar go away? Right. And in my book, when you need it, it doesn't. Okay. So this has nothing to do with the training methods. This has nothing to do with the training tool. That's nothing with my skills as a trainer. Do you drive?
Yes.
Do you drive in the expressway?
Yes.
Do you go the speed limit?
A little over.
Are you getting my point there?
Yeah.
So humans do the same thing,
Yeah.
right? And I hate the word dog training, because training implies it stops at some point. Because for a human, if your job trains you to do something new to give you a promotion, you learn that skill and you can just do it. But dogs don't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the way it works is inside the home, I would give you other means of correcting your dogs so that you don't become reliant on the e-collar inside. Okay. But if you're going to go camping, if you're going to go to your sister's place or something, there's going to be other dogs around and with food. If you're taking your dogs out for a walk, if you're going to go to the park and they're going to be off leash at the dog park and stuff like that, that's when you need that's when you need control. Right? So I tell people it's like a cop on a collar. Mm-hmm. Right? The dogs learn, oh, the collar's on, mom and dad have control, so I'm going to behave better. Yeah. Right? Everybody expects dogs to just learn and then be a good dog. That's not how it works.
Yeah. Oh, right? He does this a lot too, by the way. We might have to work on this.
Yeah. That's the no
attention whore.
No boundaries there.
No boundaries.
And you're rewarding him.
Get up.
What's that?
He will do this until I get up.
Is that Pyke?
This is Gianni. He's the one that looks more German Shepherd-y.
I see. Sure.
Pyke has a big black head.
Yeah. So when it comes to that, how do you say? Dogs don't learn on a human scale. Mm-hmm. But then again, like even humans don't obey the laws to the degree that they're supposed to, right? But if there's a squad car, of course everybody's going to speed limit, right? But as soon as the squad car turns off the expressway, everybody speeds back up again. Mm-hmm. So it's nothing good or bad. It's just the way of the world. So dogs, humans are opportunistic, dogs are opportunistic. So worst case scenario, it's if you're out on the walk with them, they're at the dog park, there's going to be another dog in the house, things like that. I have it on because I know I don't have to worry about anything. And if something happens, I have control, right? Uh-huh. And then if I don't need it, then it's not on them.
Gianni. He does this all the time. He's very vocal. He whines a lot too when he wants something.
Oh, that's just correcting it. Like we definitely want to tighten up on a lot of these things because you can't be your dog's buddy. Yeah. And also expect him to like respect you as an authority.
Yeah. See, like he's biting my sleeve right now. Like he's a baby.
Sure. Yeah.
Gianni, stop it. Bad boy.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And it's the same thing with the prong collar too.
Out. Out. Come on.
It's the same thing with the prong collar too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like they still wear it. Like so yeah, that's just how it is. Any questions?
Okay, so we already went over rates, pricing tools. How do you familiarize yourself with the dogs? How does your introduction go with them? What are sessions? What can we expect them to go like? I know you're going to coach us, you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And your style of teaching.
I would just watch one of the YouTube videos.
Oh, for sure. I haven't watched you. I watched one. I tried watching the one where you took a dog to the arm.
Oh, the white pity?
No, I was a German Shepherd.
Oh, when I was in Miami, sure. So the one I recommend you watch, because he's similar to your case, is Mac.
Mac.
Yeah, Mac lesson 1.
Are you what's your YouTube name, or is it on the website?
It would be, if you go to any video on my website, it'll go to my channel. Okay. But it's under my name. If you search Jesus San Miguel, and you'll see me with 2 pitties.
Okay.
That's my YouTube channel.
Okay.
So it's all verbal instruction. I don't need to handle the dog. I'll step in if I absolutely have to. But everybody's been loving the verbal instruction because you're learning everything from start to finish, and everything is associated to you, not me.
Okay.
Because before, when I would train the dog, it'd be me doing all the hard stuff and not the owner. So then, the owner would have a harder time doing that because it wasn't them that did it in the first place.
Okay. You said Mac, right?
Yeah, Mac, M-A-C-K.
I don't see it. Is it under one of your playlists?
If you look under Heal with e-collar, he should be one of those videos.
Ben Bear Fitz, Boogie Vito Kelly. Mac on him. Okay. So you'll mostly, so you're not really hands-on with the dogs unless you need to step in.
Yeah, I don't need to.
Okay.
And yeah, so we've got about 8 to 10 clients that did what we call social distance dog training. And I don't know, that's probably like 60 hours of dog training work there. And I maybe did a total of 5 to 10 minutes of hands-on.
Okay, so you're mostly just with us then.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be concerned about it. E-collar and the way I use it is what makes me it allows me to be able to do this and get the people to have very effective but easily attainable obedience. Okay. And then the behavior stuff too. Like it's all press of a button. It's very common sense.
Okay. And then for like the patio stuff, ideally, I guess in my head, I was thinking like, do you come to our home at all? Like, would you come to our patio? Would you come and see how they interact and what they do, or how does that go?
Because I highly doubt the patio is going to be a problem. Once you start the training and you understand it, it's really straightforward. Okay. So currently we're not doing any in-home just because of COVID, my facility just went to almost nothing. So to save money, I had to cut back on everybody's hours, and I do a bulk of the work here because I'm free work. So we have to limit when we train people, and everybody meets us because it allows me to meet more people in a day.
Okay.
But then if I see you in person, then I have to start seeing everybody in person, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
So I'm not saying that we're not going to do that, because you could always save a class or so, and then once things go back to normal and my facility is up and running and I don't need to be here as much, then I start to go back to what I used to do, which was I used to go to people's homes.
Yeah.
That's how I built my business. But we did this as a means of being able to keep the company alive, but also still be able to do reliable dog training.
Okay. Have your rates changed based on COVID or anything, or the change?
We just gave more stuff.
Okay, cool.
So it used to be 6 classes for $825. Now it's 6 classes plus 2 Zoom lessons for $825. And the Zoom lessons are $100 a piece. So you're essentially getting, $1,025 worth of service for $200 less.
Okay, perfect. Just because I know, when I was looking at your curriculum or your programs, a lot of it said in-home, and that's kind of what I liked about it, because I would feel better, that you're in their space and you see the way they act here versus at a park. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
No, for sure. So, we'll see. We've not had any issues.
Okay.
Everybody's been doing great because e-collar, it's just so common sense.
Okay.
And that's what the Zoom lessons are for. The Zoom lessons are for the stuff that's we can't do in person, like the patio or whatever. Because I really want to take the in-person stuff to do that, to really focus on that. Excuse me. And like I said, you can always save a class or two if for whatever reason you were to need the in-home. And then once things start to go back to normal and, we're opening up that service again, Maria will just reach out and say hey, we have those 2 classes. Now Jesse's doing the in-home if you want to schedule them now.
Okay.
Yeah. So because we added a link that's COVID services on our website.
Okay.
And that gives the rundown of what things look like now.
Okay, for sure. I didn't even come across it. I just kind of went over with whatever Maria showed me on line.
Sure.
And that was like the rates and programming and like what you offer.
Yeah, yeah. So the COVID services is kind of like the update for all the changes that we made to the programs and the boarding trains and stuff like that.
Okay, I'll take a look at it. What other question did I have? Oh, are you protected, or you have in your contract, like my dogs aren't ever gonna bite you or anything, but like.
Yeah, no, I've been bit before.
Okay, great, yeah.
That was a bad bite, yeah. No, so what ended up happening was we had a boarding train, and he actually bit me on the first day. Because he didn't want to go in the kennel. So I had to go to the doctor, get stitched up. They took the dog back, and I was like, just give me time to heal, and then once I healed up, we took him back, we trained him, and then he's fine.
Okay. They won't bite you, like, but if they jump on you and they scratch you or something, I don't want you like coming at us.
No, that's stupid. I'm not saying the question, but I'm saying like, it's like being a police officer and like getting mad because you got shot at. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
No, it's in the contract now. Like I don't sue my clients. I've been bit before. Okay. I get it. Unless if someone's being stupid, that's different. Yeah. And that's in the contract of as long as it's not due to gross negligence on your part and things like that, which means you're not following instructions, you're doing everything I'm telling you not to do. That's a different story. As long as you're following my instructions, there's not going to be a problem. But also, I'm not touching the dogs, so it doesn't matter.
For sure. So you don't really build a relationship with the dogs?
Not necessary. I mean, because it's between you and the dog, not me.
For sure.
Okay. So yeah, watch that video. Do your, do a little bit more research, get comfortable, and then when you're ready, reach out to Maria.
When would we be able to start?
She knows that I don't. Because how'd you say? I've learned not to talk about my schedule. It changes day by day. With consultations and Zoom lessons and pickups and transports, things like that. So.
Do you have like a ballpark idea, like at least like within the next month?
Depends on your availability. Like I know we were booking Saturday and Sunday, and I believe Saturday and Sunday just got full. Yeah. So now we opened up Fridays.
Do you on the weekends or during the week?
Well, it was only during the weekends now because that was our slowest time here at the facility. So Monday through Friday, I was here at the facility. And then Saturday and Sunday, I'm out at Oz. But now that's filled up, that now we're opening it to Friday. And then once that gets filled up, we'll slowly open it to another day until we get back to like a bit of normalcy. So.
Okay, and then now I'm gonna get a little ahead of myself, or just for the sake of your opinion or input, I guess. Your board and training, how do you feel about that versus like what we're talking about? Because we've also considered board. No.
The con of the board and train is that the training's tied to us, right? Plus, because your dogs are territorial, we're not going to see that here because it's not their territory. Okay. We do provide a lot of follow-up, but the problem is you're still missing the information of how and why it works. Okay. I'll explain it to you, but it doesn't make sense until you see it and you've applied it. Okay. So, and the board and trains make me more money, by the way.
No, okay. For sure. And I appreciate that. And actually, I'm happy that you even I appreciate that you mentioned the 9-week program. And like your rates, I feel like I do get the vibe that you actually care and are being realistic of what your clients need instead of just like being money hungry.
Yeah, no.
You appreciate that.
Board and trains, like they're easy money, and I'll do them. If it was an even more minor case, I'd say sure. But in your case, this is a lot of you and your boyfriend as well, right? Your boyfriend, like you said, he's going to be homework. Yeah. So part of the process is doing the work, making mistakes, learning from the mistakes, and then us adjusting things. And then plus it gives your boyfriend more time to kind of acclimate to the methods, because I doubt he's going to come in and just be ready to go. Yeah. He's going to have to build comfort. Okay. I've done this for a long time. I know people. I don't care about the money. I care about making sure that when you're done, you're happy. Okay. So you'll learn a lot. I think the 9-week is adequate for everything. And then, like I said, if you guys do your homework, you do you follow my instructions, and we're making great progress. I just keep teaching. Okay. I don't stop you or cut it short or anything like that. I keep teaching.
Okay. And then what if we decided to do what if he's like, you know what, let's do the 6 week. And then if we need more after that, we do the 9 week. How do you feel about that?
I don't care, but you may not have the time slot.
What do you mean?
So what we do is if you book 6 weeks, you're reserving your time with me for 6 weeks and then +1 in case you have to cancel or something. But then after that, if somebody else is needing the time, we're booking.
Okay.
Right. So if you want to guarantee your 10 weeks or whatever of my time, I suggest you do that. I don't care if you do 6 and then add 3 more later, but you might have to wait if my schedule's full, or you might have to go at a different time if that particular time is not available anymore because we already booked it for another client.
Okay. And then how much is a 6 week?
$825.
$825. And then how do your payments work? Do you take everything in full, or can you do installments, or how does that go?
If you're gonna do the 6 week, it's in full.
Okay.
If you're gonna do the 9 week, half down, and then a quarter 2 weeks later, then another quarter 2 weeks later.
Half down, a quarter 2 weeks later, and then another 2 weeks later.
Correct. And then so before the 3rd class, your 2nd payment would have to be made, and before your 5th class, your 3rd payment would have to be made.
And Maria stays on top of that. She'll let us know when it's due, right?
Yeah, and it's in the contract, but like we've had people, so like I won't show up, okay, if it's not paid, if the invoice is not paid.
Yeah.
It's rare, but we've had people not pay and then just like they get what they want and they drop off the map.
Okay.
And I'm a business. I got rent to pay, I got employees to pay. That I don't play that game.
I am with you. I am a small business owner as well.
Sure.
So okay, for sure. And then what is due? So I guess then half down to begin, right? Just sorry to reiterate. So half down for the 9 week. And that would be once we submit upon contract. Okay, so half down, great. And then for positive reinforcements, like during training, if you do those, do we need to provide treats? Do you provide those? Do you even work with treats?
The only thing I provide is this.
But like, do you want us to get treats?
You don't need it.
Okay, so no treats, nothing. Because the other thing is a lot of treats.
The only thing that you might need is the long leash, or not might. If you're doing the 9 weeks, you'll need it because we're going to do recall. 30-foot long leash, 2 of them, or 1 if you want to just split it between the 2 dogs for the recall. And they're like $8 to $12.
Well, you said on Amazon. Do I just get them there?
Yeah, Amazon. They're like $8, $12. Nothing fancy. 30-foot long leash.
Okay. For that collar, is there any other brand that you would recommend that's more cost efficient?
No, the only other brand that I would recommend makes dogs more aggressive.
Okay, so, and there's nothing you could recommend that's more cost efficient on that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, for sure. Okay, and then what happens now? Would you just send me the contract, we look over it, sign it, send it back, and then Maria schedules us and we discuss that with her? Or what
Yeah,
happens?
Maria's going to reach out to you. She's going to fill in, she's going to reiterate the pricing, the collar that you'll need. She'll send you the training forms, work out the deposit stuff or whatever, work out the scheduling. All I do is the consultation and the training.
Okay, cool. Okay, I think I have all my questions answered. Are there any questions other people asked that I should be aware of?
Nope, that's pretty much it. You asked a lot more than most people.
Sorry, I'm a concerned mom and I have big dogs. I literally cried yesterday, like had a breakdown. I'm like, this is so hard. And I've had big dogs my whole life. So it was just, yeah, I need to get all my questions covered.
Yeah, no, this is, I will say this is a lifestyle. This isn't train your dogs and then you're done. Like the amount of work once you're done is minimal, right? Because you do all the work in the beginning and once you got what you want, then it's just reinforcing everything. I'll repeat it again, dogs aren't like humans. They don't learn skills and just do them. Like, if you don't reinforce things or if you're not consistent, you're going to digress. And if you're like, oh, I'm gonna just walk them without the e-collar because they're doing so great and see what happens, like they're gonna be jerks because the cop isn't present, and I stress this so much, but at some point in every training program, the owner will ask, when does the collar go away?
Okay.
Okay. So, you know, I'm used to it now, but no matter how much I repeat it and how much I put it out there and I tell them, like, it almost always happens. When does the collar go away?
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So I got to head out. I got another Zoom call.
Oh yeah, do your thing. Thank you. Sorry, I took up so much of your time. I really appreciate all the information, and I'll wait for Maria to get in touch.
For sure. And watch that video. Okay. It'll help a lot.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much. Will you send me this recording so I can show it to my boyfriend, or do I have access to it?
Yeah. Once I upload it, it'll be on YouTube, and then I'll email it to Maria.
This consultation is going to go on YouTube today?
Yeah. Remember? Oh, no, not today. If I can today. If not, I'll email it to Maria, and then she'll send it to you once it's up.
For sure. That way I could just replay it for my boyfriend. All
Yeah.
right, Jesse, thank you so much. Sorry for holding you up so long.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, take care.